What do you do when you feel an awful burst of anger bubbling up? How do you navigate dealing with people who you just do not vibe with? What kind of coping skills do you use to manage your anxiety, worry, stress, and just life in general? In this episode, I'm going to tell you all about the coping skills I've implemented throughout my life, which ones I found useful, and the others I had to drop as they just weren't serving me anymore and due to the detriment of my health. In this episode, I'm going to tell you all about the coping skills I've implemented throughout my life, which ones I found useful and others I had to drop due to the detriment of my health and just not serving me anymore. Then I'm going to give you some useful coping skills to use if you feel like you need to manage any stress, anxiety, or worry, especially around this troubling time we're having around the world. I remember growing up, one of my biggest and most useful coping skills was being able to adapt to anyone and fit in anywhere. Some might call it a multi-personality disorder. No, it's a joke. But I was able to get along with all kinds of people. Different folks from different strokes. People from anyone from different areas and walks of life. This coping skill, quote unquote, wasn't something I was aware of. Like, I didn't think to myself, oh, this is a coping skill, so to speak. I wasn't aware of it being that until I actually went inward on my self-discovery journey. This is something that I gradually built up from a young age. And what I discovered was that this coping skill actually stemmed from being bullied growing up as a child. Like the 4-year-old Sarah being left out by other kids on the street. Just nasty kids being mean. And even though, kids are kids, it did have a little bit of an impact on me. Then the 6-year-old or the 7-year-old Sarah, I remember being picked on at school because of my Kerry accent, because I used to live down in the south of Ireland and then moved up to Dublin, and my sister and I and my family had a strong Kerry accent when we moved to Dublin, so that was a big thing. And kids are kids, nobody's doing anything wrong really, but it's just a little thing that gnaws away at your feelings. Then when I was about 12 or 13, we moved to a town called Bray, and I lived in a housing estate, which was like a brand new estate, and across the road was another housing estate built by the government, and it was called a council estate. And I remember the people from the council estate chasing me up and down the road just because I lived in the posh estate, they used to call it. So I used to just get awfully bullied by those people across the road. And then in secondary school, proper bullied, like just secondary school, general bullying. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want to be the victim here. I was very proud of the coping skill that I developed. And the coping skill was to be able to adapt to anyone, anywhere, because in the end, I ended up being friends with my bullies. You know that saying, if you can't beat them, join them? Well, that's exactly what I did. So I ended up making friends with my bullies, all of them, and just adapting to them. And obviously, that kind of hardened myself up as well. It definitely made me streetwise. So I'm actually very grateful that I had those tools, those strengthening tools and streetwise tools to make me a bit stronger in the world. One tool I started to use in a social environment, especially to help me adapt to different situations and groups of people, like, was alcohol. You know, the way you just grow up as a teenager and you just start drinking alcohol, and it just helps you be more fun and adapt to everyone, and that's just the way my teenage years were anyway. It did help me with any uncomfortableness, any possible feelings of rejection, or any exclusiveness. So I used alcohol as a tool for the majority of my life, starting my teens up until about 2 years ago. And then about 2 years ago, I realized that alcohol actually wasn't for me anymore, and it wasn't serving me any longer. So I decided to give it up. I also felt like I wasn't in control of it. So I gave it up. It was actually more difficult to be in a social environment without alcohol, and a lot of uncomfortable emotions over time started to surface. And it led me to think, why? What's going on here? Why am I feeling so uncomfortable? What is all of this? So that, like, coping skill of adapting to everyone in different situations started to fade away. So I'm just going to stop waffling about myself for the moment and give you a coping skill. This coping skill is called EFT tapping, and it's called Emotional Freedom Technique. This basically targets acupuncture centers all around your body. There are, on the side of your hand, on the outside of your hand, there are some acupuncture points. Then underneath your arm, near your armpit, there are some as well. Then just under your collarbone, there are 2 parts on your chin, then your cheekbones. I'll actually put the link in the show notes so that you can practice it yourself. And there'll be a document with instructions, and there'll also be a video there for you to look. But basically, the objective of EFT tapping, Emotional Freedom Technique tapping, is to release and let go of stress and worry, anxiety, any kind of uneasiness. Okay, and it really helps you to focus on the uneasiness feeling that you're actually going through, and to let it go. The idea of it is to really focus on the emotion. And when you're tapping, you focus on the motion. When you focus on the motion, you kind of say to yourself, how am I feeling out of 10? Is it a 10 or a 9? And then you continue to tap, focusing on the emotion all around the acupuncture points. And then by the last point, you should be really actually feeling a release of anxiety or stress. It's really, really useful. And obviously throughout the whole thing, you take in a deep breaths in and deep breaths out. And I really can't recommend it more. It's really good for managing emotional and physical issues. Obviously, if you're going through something that's critical, it's important to go to your doctor and make sure that everything's okay. You know, this is just complimentary advice that I actually use myself. And it's one of my coping skills. It's funny because I came across this EFT tapping technique when I stopped drinking alcohol about 2 years ago, and I went on an inward journey, just exploring, trying to find out why all these uneasiness feelings, where they were coming from, where they stemmed from, what happened, like why I was feeling all of this. Because obviously all of those feelings were covered when you drink alcohol or whatever kind of substances or self-medication people use. But yeah, it's like emotions aren't able to surface really if you're drinking. So anyway, these kind of emotions start to bubble up, and I start to ask why. So in order for me to relieve the actual uncomfortable feelings, I started to do EFT tapping. One of the most uncomfortable feeling that I got, the very first one, was like an awful, like FOMO, like fear of missing out, rejection feeling. And this is how I discovered all of my coping skills, because I wanted to find out, and obviously through journaling and WhatsApp messaging to myself, I was able to explore my thoughts and go inwards. And through quantum healing hypnosis, I started to get answers. So this is how it's all of the pieces of the puzzles are coming together. And I discovered that rejection was a big, huge thing in my life. Like, huge. And that's what it stemmed from being bullied growing up, just different situations where I just felt rejected, and it's absolutely understandable that I felt like that. So when I actually became aware that it was rejection that I was feeling, it's like a weight lifted off my shoulders, because that bringing energy to that awareness is a healing in itself. And I obviously continued to do the EFT tapping and mindfulness and other healing techniques that I used to practice, and I still do. And it started to lift, and now I don't really feel that rejection anymore. I actually don't. So there was a big, huge healing there. So yeah, I highly recommend EFT tapping and going inwards. And if you need some guidance, please get in contact with me. Obviously, if you happen to come across a big trauma, it's important to get in contact with a professional who's able to deal with trauma. I have had experience where clients wanted to release hidden trauma through quantum hypnosis, and that's with their consent, and through quantum healing and hypnosis, and with the supportive energy that we're surrounded, we were able to do it in a safe space. But if you're unsure that you have the skills to manage this trauma on your own, please get in contact with a professional. What kind of coping skills did you learn growing up as a child in adapting to the world? Let me know. And what kind of coping skills do you use nowadays when you're in a difficult situation? A really useful coping skill that I developed because of those strengthening streetwise tools was I was able to not allow anyone else upset me ever again. And I kind of hardened my heart. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of human design, but human design is another, how would you say, modality for understanding ourselves. It's along the lines of astrology, in terms of you need to give your date of birth, where you were born and the time you were born, and then it gives you a chart of your body, and there are some, how would you say, triangles and squares all around your body, and it basically explains what type of person you are. And it's really, 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 really helpful, because I discovered that I was actually an empath. I never knew I was an empath because I had hardened my heart and just kind of not allowed anyone to hurt me anymore. So I kind of put a wall up around my heart, which served me very well. And it made me feel pretty much able for anything. Anywhere I went, like, I wasn't afraid. So it was really strengthening, to be honest. Another really useful coping skill, especially when you're watching the news and you're seeing the wars and the trouble and the hurt and the disaster that's going on all around the world. It's important to protect ourselves. I can't even watch the news, I'm not going to lie. I'm informed about what's going on, and I do find it interesting. and awfully heartbreaking at the same time. But I just can't watch the news. If I do watch the news, I literally visualize myself in a cocoon of protective energy. And I highly recommend you do this in any situation. If you're an empath or if you have any kind of sensitivity or you want to protect your energy, if you know you're going to be around somebody who's draining, or you want to just reserve your energy, imagine yourself in a cocoon, like a big huge bubble of white light. And that cocoon is your protective bubble. Along the rim of the cocoon on the outside, imagine a violet light just kind of bordering the circle all around. And if you can imagine, and just with the intention is everything, with the intend that this circle of protective energy is going to protect you from the hardship in the news, from any kind of draining person, from a really hard working day ahead, from getting too stressed at work, to, being overcome with anxiety. A really good way to protect your energy from getting anxious after EFT tapping is to do that bubble protection technique. It's like just surrounding yourself in a bubble, just what I said there. So yes, I really hope you can try this out. Please let me know if you try these techniques out. Contact me on my website or on Instagram. Send me an email. Let me know if you try them out. I'd love to hear. Or let me know what coping skills you have. And also, I'd love to hear how everyone's feeling right now in the moment in the world. You're more than welcome to talk about things. I have my ears wide open, and I'll happily go through everything and help. We can help each other. It's a community here. One more coping skill that I have up my sleeve is creating a WhatsApp group to yourself. How do I do this? How do you do that? Well, what you do is you set up a group with another person. So it's you and another person, and then you delete the other person. So it's just a WhatsApp message from you to you. And then I actually have 2 of these. One of them is for my voice journaling, if you want to call it that, like voice clip journaling. Because, you could be out walking in the park or on the metro or anywhere, and you don't want to get out a pen and paper and start writing things down. But if that's the type of person you are, that's perfect. I'm more of a speaker and a listener rather than a writer. So that's why I use WhatsApp voice notes. And I have another one then just to help me remember things and just ideas that I get. But my voice journaling is really, really useful because it helps me release and let go of like frustrations, of things that would be very useful written down in order to. It's like, do you know what it's like? It's like a self-therapy. So you're basically giving yourself self-therapy and allowing that trapped energy, that trapped frustration, that trapped irritableness, or any kind of whatever you're feeling inside, you're releasing that energy. So it's actually an energy release. It's really, really powerful and quite healing. So I recommend you do that. Let me know how you get on. I also record my dreams in that one. I don't know if you ever wake up in the morning or in the middle of the night and you remember your dreams, and it's a bit of a pain in the ass to get a pen and paper. So I just record it. I'm like whispering in the bathroom. I'm like, shh. So my number one best favorite coping skill is drumbeat, dum 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 dum, is earthing. And I know you're going to throw your eyes up to heaven, because people living in countries where it's absolutely lashing out of the heavens may not feel like taking off their shoes and standing in the wet grass. And that's okay, because you don't have to. But you can be around plants. I have loads of plants around me. Just the energy from the plants is lovely and healing. But when the sun does come out, and if you do have a garden or a park, just take your shoes off and stand in the grass. If it's too wet to sit down, don't do that. But stand on the grass and just imagine just taking deep breaths and allow the energy to go into the ground, to be rejuvenated by the earth, be recycled by this earth. And it really is a rebalancing. It's like a recalibrating technique. But earthing, it basically, when you stand on the grass, the earth's natural electric charge stabilizes the physiology at your deepest level. So it reduces inflammation, pain, stress. It improves body flow, energy. It actually even helps you sleep and overall improves your well-being. So earthing. Get your feet out and stand in the grass. The electrons just flow into your body. Feel the tingleness. There's an earthing movie that's really interesting. I'll put the link in the show notes, and you can check that out, and you can see the benefits. Like, people have cured themselves from different illnesses. You're going to be absolutely blown off the grass. Well, you're not going to be blown off the grass actually, but like, you're going to feel good. The one that I'm going to talk to you about now is a breathing coping skill. So this is especially good if you're somebody who panics, and if you suffer with anxiety or stress. This coping skill is called box breathing, and you breathe in for 5, so hold for 5, out for 5, and hold for 5. And repeat that literally 10 times. And that coping skill, that breathing technique, will literally instantly help you feel more grounded and release any anxiety as well. If you need to do it for more than 10 times, well, feel free to do it for more than 10 times. Imagine a root, like a tree root, coming out of your body and into the ground, so that you are anchored to the earth, because you can release and let go of stress and anxiety through this root that anchors you to the earth. Anything you want to release and let go, just as you breathe out, just allow that energy to go down through the root that anchors you to the earth, so that the earth is absorbing all of that stress and anxiety and worry, and it recycles it. So that's why it's so good to be in nature, because nature really purifies our energy. This brings me to the end of the episode. I hope you've enjoyed all of these coping skills and healing modalities that I've explained, and I'd love to hear how they work for you. Feel free to get in contact with me if you would like to work with me, if you're interested in embarking on your healing journey, or have any questions or queries or anything, or don't understand anything. Reach out to me. Join my community on healingwithsarah.com, connect with me on Instagram, or send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your time and your ears. Have a lovely week, and I'll see you next week.